Week 14 of the fantasy football season. His running back starts at every matchup this week. Dallas Cowboys at the Lions, Thursday Night Football. Javonte Williams, what a season it's been for him. And he just needed time, I think, to heal from that ACL injury. So this week in a good matchup at the Lions, a run defense that hasn't been good. And this Lion team is definitely taking steps back over the last few weeks. He's a start. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a start. Last week was a down week for Gibbs. We're going back a couple weeks ago versus Giants in week 12. He had a monster game, over 200 yards on the ground, 11 catches, had 3 touchdowns in that one. So this week in a matchup, even though this Cowboy run defense has improved, I still think Gibbs could go out there and have a big performance this week. David Montgomery, a fringe option at this point. Unfortunately, he's only a touchdown-dependent running back as David Montgomery. So last week he did find the end zone in that ball game was David Montgomery in the loss to the Green Bay Packers. And this week versus the Cowboys, he's a fringe option. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Ravens. Jaylen Warren a start. Found the end zone last week. Not much going on in this passing game. And I think the best way for Pittsburgh to try to win this game, physical in between the tackles, running the football, and keeping, obviously, Lamar Jackson and his offense off the field, even though this offense hasn't been great over the last few weeks here. So Warren is starting. Kenneth Gainwell was sit last week. Gainwell, he didn't do much. Going back a couple weeks ago, we had a big game at the Chicago Bears, was Kenneth Gainwell. But like I said, if there's games where he's not getting many touches, there's going to be games where this backfield's pretty much 80% of Warren and games where it's 50-50, depending on the game script. But last week, this offense was barely on the field versus the Buffalo Bills. But Gainwell, in a Week 14 matchup, I can't trust him to sit. Derrick Henry, he's a start each and every week. The only bright spot in this offense over the last couple weeks for this Baltimore Raven team, especially last week, where he had another nice performance, was Derrick Henry. So this week, even in a tougher matchup versus a good defense of the Steelers, even though we just saw James Cook go out there for 144 yards on the ground, he's a start. Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet are starts in this one. I know Walker, his numbers haven't been great this season, but this 1-2 tandem are still going out there and making plays, especially in the matchups at the bad defenses. So Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet last week both had solid games. This week it's a good matchup indoors, fast track at the Atlanta Falcons. And we know this Falcon defense really can't stop anyone. So I will put them in the lineup, especially with 4 teams on bye. And Bijan Robinson last week, over 150 yards from scrimmage. He found the end zone, having another monster season for Bijan Robinson. I know Algier did vulture a touchdown from him, but that doesn't hurt Bijan. Week in and week out, he's still putting up elite numbers at the position. Tyler Algier, like I said, I know he vultured a touchdown last week in 3 out of 4 games. He's got a touchdown as Tyler Algier, but if he's not vulturing touchdowns, he don't really have value. And at this point, to me, he's only a good handcuff stash for the playoffs for fantasy owners. He's a sit this week. Tennessee Titans at the Cleveland Browns. Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears are sits in this one. This is a tough matchup versus a good Brown defense. Pretty much the ceiling for Pollard and Spears, there hasn't been much all season long, where these are games they're trailing and their offense isn't good and they get off the field pretty quick. Most drives than not. So this week in Cleveland, these guys, like I said, 8-10 points at most you're going to get from them. That's it. Quinshon Judkins a start. It's been a solid rookie season here for Quinshon Judkins. Physical back in between the tackles. No competition in the backfield. And this week in a matchup versus Tennessee Titans, a team that really can't stop anyone in a game where they should have the lead early, and that obviously plays into the hand of Judkins having a good game. He's a start. Miami Dolphins at the Jets. 2 good running backs going at it in this one. Devon Achane having a monster season, one of the best running backs in fantasy football. Once again, top 5 points at the position, and it seems like weekly 15 or more fantasy points you could pencil in Devon Achane for. So this week in a matchup with the New York Jets, where their defense last week just got torched, like I said, from Bijan Robinson, over 150 scrimmage yards. He's an easy start. And Breece Hall will start as well. This defense, other than Miami Dolphins, isn't any good. Breece Hall, obviously, big workload he's going to get week in and week out with. Ever since Allen went out with injury, Hall's snaps have gone up. And even with Tyrod Taylor in there, his receptions per game have gone up. So this week in a matchup versus the Dolphins, he's a good start. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alvin Kamara, if he plays, he will be a start for me in this game. This Tampa Bay defense isn't all that good. And Alvin Kamara, obviously playing with the Saints his whole career, has a good track record versus Tampa Bay Buc defense. So this week, if Kamara's back, he's a start. And if not, it'll be Devin Neal as the starting running back once again. Where last week it wasn't a great game for Neal, but he was out there pretty much every snap in the backfield. Taysom Hill wasn't a factor. Audric Estime wasn't a factor at all. And Neal, he had a couple decent runs in that one, but when you're trailing, it's tough to get in rhythm for a young running back, even though he made a couple catches out of the backfield. Now to the Bucs, Bucky Irvin, an easy start. Last week he came back, he looked good. Bucky Irvin found the end zone as well in that game, and this week in a good matchup versus the New Orleans Saints, he's an easy start. And Rachaad White, he was spelling Irvin here and there in this game, but it's Bucky Irvin's backfield with Rachaad White coming in and passing downs and some third downs, and also Sean Tucker, he was phased out of the offense. But White this week is sit in the Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars. So Jonathan Taylor last week was a pretty good game for him, but he hasn't been putting up the elite numbers in the last few weeks as Jonathan Taylor, where teams obviously are focusing in, bottling him up, and stopping him from getting big plays. So last week, 85 yards on the ground. He added 3 catches for 35 yards in that game as well. And this week, a pretty good matchup at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So after one bad game and a mediocre game, he'll bounce back. He's a start. Travis Etienne a start. It's been a good season for Travis Etienne, a bounce back for him. And obviously this Jacksonville Jaguar team and this Colt team, middle of the pack type of defense. Etienne, he's the running back you want over there, obviously in Jacksonville, having a good season to start. Bachel Tootin, more of a change of pace, occasionally getting goal line touches, but this week we have to see more out of Tootin, especially, like I said, this is a crucial week for fantasy owners. You're not going to put Tootin in the lineup and trust him as a start. He's a sit. Commanders at the Vikings, Chris Rodriguez, he's the lead back over there for this Washington Commander team. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he hasn't played a factor the last couple games, especially in last week's ball game in the loss versus the Broncos. And Jeremy McNichols, he's nothing more than a change of pace back on third down and some passing downs. But this week in a matchup in Minnesota where I know the defense hasn't been great, still Rodriguez, I don't think the work is big enough for him to go out there and be consistent week in and week out. So he's a sit. Aaron Jones, if he plays, he's a start. Aaron Jones day-to-day right now, the reports are coming out. We left last week's ball game at the Seattle Seahawks with a shoulder injury. And to be honest, he was better off. That game was over from the get-go in that one. So Jones, if he's back in the lineup this week, he's a start. And if not, Jordan Mason will take over the reins at the running back position. And this is a pretty good matchup versus the Washington Commanders. We saw R.J. Harvey go out there last week, have a good game and find the end zone twice versus defense. So whoever the back is this week, I would start them. Cincinnati Bengals at the Bills, Chase Brown, he's locked in as a start each and every week. Samaje Perine, he's been banged up over the last few weeks, and he wasn't even a factor anyway coming into the season, or even the some weeks he got the work. So this week, a good matchup at the Bills. Run defense isn't great. So Brown, I think this week will Burrow back in the lineup. Obviously, teams are going to focus in stopping Burrow, and it opens up the run game. James Cook has started last week, a big game at the Steelers, 144 yards on the ground and was for James Cook. And this week, a slam dunk matchup versus one of the worst defenses in the league of the Bengals, even though last week their defense came out and played well at Baltimore. So Cook will start. Denver Broncos at the Vegas Raiders, it's R.J. Harvey's backfield. Walkland, he was mixed in a little bit, and Tyler Beatty. But R.J. Harvey, he got the goal line touches. He had the most work out of the 3 running backs in that backfield for Denver. And last week found the end zone twice. And this week, a great matchup at the Vegas Raiders that can't stop anyone. We just saw Vidal go over 100 yards. So Harvey a start, Ashton Jeanty a start. I know tough matchup on paper versus the Broncos, but all season long, Jeanty's been in the starting lineup for fantasy owners. And this week versus the Denver Broncos, I still think he can go out there and make plays. He's getting a little bit better catching the football out of the backfield. And pretty much this offense is Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty, with guys like Trey Tucker and at times Tyler Lockett making a few plays here and there, but he's a start. The Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai starts. After last week going in to Philadelphia and dominating the offensive line and running all over the place, where both these running backs had big ball games. Even this week in a tough matchup versus the Green Bay Packers, even though Wyatt, one of the better defenders, is out for the season. I think Swift and Monangai, they could be starts. This could be a game where the weather's obviously not great, especially in Green Bay in December, where it's going to be cold, it's going to be heavy winds, and who knows how the weather is there, where it could possibly be snow. But last week, this was a great 1-2 combo in the backfield, and I said this in other videos. Ben Johnson, he's trying to duplicate what he did in Detroit with 2 good backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery and bring it here in Chicago, and that's been the case. So this week, I both would put them in the starting lineup. Josh Jacobs, he's locked in weekly as a start. This still is a run-first team for the Green Bay Packers, even though Jordan Love had 4 passing touchdowns in last week's game. So this week in a pretty good matchup, Jacobs is locked in. He's a start. Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. Kyren Williams, if he does play in this game, he's a start. And head coach Sean McVay said Kyren, he still looked good after that ball game. So we know he left the game last week with the ankle for a little bit, came back, and he finished off with a touchdown on 72 yards in that one. So this week, I expect Williams to play, and if he does, he's a start. And Blake Corum, if he has to fill in for Kyren Williams, he will be a start. And definitely a guy for fantasy owners to go out there regardless and get as one of the better handcuff running backs in the league. So last week, Corum, 7 carries, 81 yards, found the end zone at the Carolina Panthers. And this week, if he gets an expanded role, if Williams is out, he's a must start. Now to the Cardinals, Trey Benson. I thought the last couple weeks he was going to play, but obviously he's not 100%, and if he don't return in the next week here, he'll be ruled out for the season since his 21-day window's been open for Trey Benson. It's a Bam night. He's filled in very well over the last few weeks here. Physical running back in between the tackles, could catch the football a little bit out of the backfield. So this week versus the Rams, if it's Benson, he's a fringe option, or if it's Bam night, is the starter once again, fringe option. And Michael Carter sit nothing more than the third down, change of pace back, and he's not really a back that's going to do much in between the tackles. And this week in a tough matchup versus the Rams, he will be a sit. Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs, Woody Marks, he's the back over there for this Houston Texan team, even though I don't think his upside is that high for Woody Marks. And this is a tough matchup at the Kansas City Chiefs, even though Javonte Williams last week, he went out there and he tied out this defense in that second half of the game. But Marks, to me, is a fringe option. We have to see a little bit more out of Marks. We haven't seen those big patented runs and monster games yet. Only one big game he's had this season. And Nick Chubb is it. He's a touchdown-dependent running back. I know his best years are behind him with bad knees is Nick Chubb. And this week at Kansas City, I wouldn't trust him. He's a sick Kareem Hunt. He's a fringe option this week. This is a tough matchup, obviously, versus the Houston Texans, one of the better defenses in the league. And last week, I thought the Dallas Cowboys did a good job with Kareem Hunt, especially in the second half. He couldn't get anything going where Mahomes had to go out there and pretty much do anything. And Isaiah Pacheco, another lost season it's been for him. He hasn't been productive. He's been banged up as well on and off the last couple weeks with a knee injury. And this week, how could you trust him where you've seen nothing all season? He's a sit. Monday night, Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Chargers. Saquon Barkley a start. I know Saquon Barkley, it hasn't been a good year for him, but he's still getting the touches of Saquon Barkley. A lot of wear and tear on his body, obviously, from last season, touching the football over 300 times and rushing for 2,000 yards. But this week in Los Angeles, I think it's a decent matchup. Indoor game, don't have to deal with the outside elements of Philadelphia. So Barkley, you went with him all season long, I would start him. And now to the Chargers, Amari Hampton. He had his 21-day window opened up last week, and he practiced, but obviously didn't play in the game. So if Hampton's back in the lineup, I could see this being a 50-50 split in his return, where he's most likely not 100% coming off the ankle with Kamini Vidal. So if Hampton's back in the lineup, he's a start, even versus a good defense, and Vidal a start as well, where last week a great game it was for Vidal. Once again, 120 yards on the ground and found the end zone, including a 60-yard touchdown. So if it's a 50-50 split, I still would start these guys. And obviously, if Hampton's not going to play again, Vidal is going to get the full workload in the backfield. So that's running back starts at every matchup for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.